Andre Washington was 38 years old, and until that Tuesday afternoon, he believed his marriage was simply going through a season. He was a senior architect who had quietly designed some of Atlanta's most celebrated buildings. His name just never appeared on them. His wife Krista knew that. She called his career his little job. She said he had no ambition. She said he was boring. What she did not know was that Andre Washington noticed everything, documented everything, and never moved until he was ready. That afternoon, Andre left work early and stopped at the restaurant where they had their first date. He ordered her usual salmon, lemon tart. Without thinking, he drove home. There were 2 cars in his driveway he had never seen. He opened his front door to find his wife in her silk robe beside another man. 2 more men in his chairs, bottles open on his coffee table. She looked up, saw her husband standing in his own doorway, and laughed. Not nervously, fully, dismissively, like he was nothing. Andre set the bag on the table. He said 4 words. Then he walked upstairs. What Krista Washington did not know, could not have known, because she had spent 6 years deciding exactly who her husband was that she had just made the last miscalculation of her marriage. 48 hours later, she would have nothing, and it would all be his doing. Before we jump into the story, comment where in the world you are watching from, and subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you need to hear. The Hargrove Center was going to be the best building in Atlanta that most people would never know Andre Washington designed. He had known this from the beginning. Known it the way he knew which load-bearing walls you could open up and which ones would bring the ceiling down if you so much as touched them. He knew the architecture of things. He knew what held and what only looked like it held. This was his gift, and it was also, in the 11 years since Lloyd Gates had hired him, the thing he had learned to keep mostly to himself. The final design review took place on a Tuesday afternoon in the 4th-floor conference room. The room was full. Project manager, 2 junior associates, a representative from the development group, and Lloyd himself at the head of the table, silver-haired and patrician, wearing the quiet confidence of a man whose name was already on the door. Andre sat to Lloyd's left and said almost nothing for the first 40 minutes. He didn't need to. Every rendering on that screen was his. Every structural calculation. Every site-responsive decision that made the Hargrove Center something more than a box with windows. The junior associates walked through the slides. Lloyd narrated with the easy authority of a man reading someone else's work as his own. Andre watched the developer's face and waited. He saw the exact moment the man understood what he was actually looking at. A slight forward lean, a narrowing of attention, the look of someone recalibrating the room. The developer pointed at the screen. Who handled the light well integration on the east facade? A beat. The junior associate looked at Lloyd. Lloyd looked at his notes. Andre looked at the rendering. That came out of our design process, Lloyd said. It was true, the way it is true, that a river comes out of rain. Technically accurate. Architecturally incomplete. Andre did not correct him. He took a slow sip of coffee, watched the developer nod and move on, and filed the moment away in the same internal cabinet where he kept all the others like it. The cabinet was nearly full. He'd been adding to it for years. Small moments, clean and precise, stacked in order. He was a disciplined man. He did not open that cabinet at work. He did not open it at home. He simply kept it, and he kept it carefully. The call came at 2:47 p.m. The masonry contractor on a residential project across town had finished 3 days early. The site walk was canceled. Andre was free. He gathered his things without ceremony, nodded to the front desk on his way out, and stepped into the late afternoon sun. The city was doing what Atlanta does in October. Warm enough to keep your jacket open, cool enough to remind you that something is changing. He pulled out his phone and typed a text to Krista. Heading home early. Picking up dinner. He waited a moment. No response. He put the phone away. That wasn't unusual. Maison Rouge sat on Peachtree in a narrow two-story building with a red awning and fogged windows that always seemed to hold the smell of good butter and warm bread. Andre had taken Krista there on their first date 6 years ago. She had ordered the pan-seared salmon. She had laughed at how he said bouillabaisse, the real kind of laugh, surprised out of her, and she had reached across the table and touched his hand in that particular way that told him she had already decided something. He ordered without looking at the menu. Salmon. Roasted vegetables. The lemon tart she always said she was too full for, and then ate down to the last crumb. He didn't think about it. He just ordered it, the way you reach for the light switch in a room you've lived in long enough. His hands knew the shape of her preferences, even when his mind was somewhere else. He waited at the counter and thought about the Hargrove light wells, about the angle of calculation that made them work, the way the east facade would catch morning light and push it 40 feet into the building's interior, so that people sitting in the lobby at 9 a.m. would feel the sun without seeing the street. He had spent 3 weeks on that detail alone. Lloyd had spent 11 seconds taking credit for it. The bag was warm in his hand when he walked back to the car. He drove with one hand on the wheel, composing the evening as he went. He would change out of his work clothes. She would be home. They would eat at the kitchen table. Not in front of the television, not with her phone face up between them, but actually at the table. They would talk. He would tell her about the Hargrove Review. She would probably make the remark about his little job, the one that had been getting sharper lately, the one he absorbed without reacting because he knew that reacting was not the same as resolving, and he was not a man who confused the two. But maybe not tonight. He turned onto their street. There were 2 cars in the driveway he did not recognize, a black BMW 5 Series and a silver Audi, both late model. Both clean, parked with the casual confidence of vehicles that expected to be there a while. Andre pulled in behind them and sat with the engine running. The restaurant bag was warm in his hand. The music reached him before he opened the door. Not through the walls, through the door itself, which meant it was loud. The kind of loud that meant people were comfortable. People who had no reason to be quiet. Andre sat in his car with the engine running and the restaurant bag warm against his palm, and he listened to the bass moving through his front door. He looked at the BMW. He looked at the Audi. He looked at the light coming through the living room window, warm and yellow and ordinary, the way light looks when the people inside it have no idea the evening is about to change. He turned off the engine. He walked to his front door. He stood there. He counted. He did not decide to count. His mind simply went precise, the way it did when he was standing in front of a structural problem, the way it went quiet and exact and patient. He stood at the threshold of his own home, and his mind counted 11 seconds, and he opened the door. The living room hit him all at once. Krista was on the sectional. Their sectional, the one they had argued about for a Saturday and a half before they agreed on the fabric. The one positioned under the skylight, Andre had designed the renovation around 2 years ago. Standing in this exact room with a contractor's tape measure and a clear picture in his mind of how the light would move through the space in the morning. She was in her ivory silk robe, the good one, the deliberate one, the one she wore when the day belonged entirely to her. The man beside her was white, early 40s, groomed in the particular way that costs money but tries not to look like it. A little too clean, a little too assembled, the kind of man who spent real time in front of a mirror and had decided the result was effortless. His arm was draped along the back of the sectional, behind Krista's head, not quite touching her. The posture of a man who knew precisely where the line was and had been standing just behind it all afternoon, comfortable in the knowledge that the line was his to move. Two other men occupied the chairs on the far side of the coffee table. Both white, similar age, the relaxed, unhurried look of men who were exactly where they expected to be. Khakis, quarter zips, the kind of comfortable that does not check the time. On the coffee table, Andre's coffee table, the one Krista had spent 3 weekends sourcing, there were bottles open, and glasses used, and the general arrangement of an afternoon that had gone long and did not intend to apologize for it. The man beside Krista said something low. Krista laughed. She was still laughing when she looked up and saw her husband standing in his own doorway. For 1/2 second, something moved across her face. Something real. A flash of voltage, fast and honest, the only honest thing in the room. Andre saw it. Then it was gone. And she laughed again. Not the nervous kind. Not the scrambling, caught kind that collapses in on itself. A full laugh, open, unhurried, loose at the edges. The kind of laugh that says, this is not worth the energy of pretending it is serious. She cut her eyes toward the man beside her, sharing something wordless. And the man, Kevin, though Andre did not know his name yet, produced a slow smirk that did not quite reach his eyes. The two men in the chairs exchanged a glance, not even a smirk between them. Just a glance, brief and flat and bored. The way men look at each other when something minor has briefly interrupted a conversation they intend to return to. Andre looked at the room. He looked at Kevin. He looked at the two men in his chairs. He looked at the open bottles on his coffee table. He looked at the skylight above them, the one he had drawn by hand on a Tuesday morning 2 years ago because he wanted to know exactly how the light would fall. He set the restaurant bag on the entry table. He stood there 1 moment longer, not frozen, not performing stillness, just finishing the read, the way he finished every read, completely, before he moved. "Enjoy your evening," he said. He walked upstairs. The bedroom was quiet, in the specific way that rooms are quiet when the noise from downstairs hasn't reached them yet. Andre sat on the edge of the bed, his side, the left side. He sat with his hands loose in his lap, and he looked at the wall, and he did not move for 6 minutes. He did not think about Kevin's arm on the back of the sectional. He did not think about the smirk. He did not think about Krista's laugh, or the way it had been aimed at him like something casual and sharp. He thought about the cabinet, the one that was nearly full. He thought about all the moments he had filed away, all the patience, all the credit quietly taken, at work and at home, by people who had looked at his steadiness and decided it was something they were allowed to use. He picked up his phone. He called his brother. Philip answered on the second ring. "Talk to me," he said. No hello. No what's wrong. Just the open door, held wide, the way Philip had always held it for his brother. Andre sat on the edge of the guest room bed and talked. He gave Philip 3 minutes of clean, ordered facts. The 2 cars he did not recognize. The living room. Krista in the ivory robe on the sectional they had argued about. The man beside her, white, early 40s, arm draped behind her head, comfortable in a way that did not happen in one afternoon. The 2 men in the chairs, the bottles on the coffee table, the laugh. The way she had looked at the man beside her when she laughed, like Andre was a small thing in a room full of bigger things. He told Philip how long he had been noticing. The late evenings, the weekends that produced no commissions he could account for, the contempt she had stopped bothering to soften. He told it the way he would describe a structural problem, without editorializing, without anger in his voice, just the pieces laid out in sequence so the shape of the thing was clear. When he finished, Philip was quiet for a moment. Not uncomfortable quiet, thinking quiet, the specific silence of a man who was already 3 steps ahead and wanted to make sure he was walking in the right direction. "What do you want the outcome to look like?" Philip said. Andre had been sitting with this question for the last 6 minutes without knowing it. The answer came out clean and without hesitation. He told him. All of it. The marriage. The house. The account he was almost certain she had been managing without him. The documents he suspected existed. The professional credit that had been taken from him at work, year after year, and the position he had been building toward that he now understood he needed to build differently. He told Philip what he wanted to reclaim and what he was willing to lose, and what he was not willing to let stand. Philip listened without interrupting. "Okay," he said, when Andre was done. Just that. "Okay." The word of a man who had already started moving. "Give me tonight." Andre set the phone down on the guest room nightstand. When he came back downstairs, the cars were gone. The music was off. The living room was quiet. The bottles cleared from the coffee table. Not put away, just moved to the kitchen counter. The kind of half-cleanup that is more about the appearance of order than the reality of it. The glasses were still on the drying rack, rinsed but not washed. Krista was at the kitchen counter with a glass of wine. She had retied her robe. Her hair was pulled back. Her expression was the one she put on when she had decided in advance how a conversation was going to go. A kind of preemptive boredom, like she was already past the part where he made his case. She looked at him when he came in. She did not apologize. She did not explain. "You didn't have to make it weird," she said. Andre opened the refrigerator. He took out a bottle of water. "They're friends," Krista said. "Kevin works in overlapping circles. We know each other professionally. That's what adults do. They have colleagues, they have relationships, they have lives." She let that land. Lives, as opposed to whatever she had decided his was. "You walked in, you didn't say a word to anybody. You acted like—" She stopped, shook her head. "It was embarrassing, Andre. You embarrassed yourself." Andre unscrewed the cap. "You know what your problem is?" She turned to face him fully now, wine glass in hand, finding her footing. "You have no ambition. You sit in that firm for 11 years drawing other people's buildings, and you think being steady is a personality. You think showing up is enough." She said it the way she had been saying versions of it for 2 years. Not sharp, exactly. Smooth. The way a contempt sounds when it has been held so long it has become casual. "You should have seen this coming. I have needs. I have been suffocating in this house. That is not something I should have to apologize to you for." She was watching him, waiting. Her chin lifted just slightly, braced for the explosion that would prove she had been right about him all along. That he was reactive, small, a man who made scenes. The anger would be her justification. She needed it. Andre drank his water. He set the bottle on the counter. "I'll be in the guest room," he said. "Don't move anything in this house." Krista stared at him. Something shifted behind her eyes. Not quite worry, not quite confusion, but the first early edge of something that did not fit her template. Then she recovered, and she laughed. "Or what?" she said. Andre walked out of the kitchen. The guest room door clicked shut behind him. Quiet. Solid. He did not slam it. He sat down at the small desk, opened his laptop, and navigated to the Ring application. He clicked on the access log. The entries loaded slowly, oldest to most recent, and Andre Washington began to read. The access log loaded line by line, each entry a small gray rectangle with a timestamp and a thumbnail. Andre scrolled slowly. He was not looking for anything specific yet. He was reading the way he read blueprints, the full picture first, before the details, so you understood what you were actually looking at before you started measuring. He scrolled back 14 months. Then he sorted by vehicle. The interface had a detection filter. It had learned the cars that belonged, the ones that came and went without flagging. His Volvo. Krista's Lexus is silver, which she had traded in 8 months ago for a white one. The neighbor's truck that sometimes parked on the street. These were the background. These were expected. He filtered them out. What remained was everything else. He looked at the screen for a long moment. Then he went back to the top and started counting. The black BMW appeared 31 times. Andre counted twice. He was not the kind of man who accepted a number that surprised him without verifying it. He counted once quickly and once slowly, touching the trackpad to move through each entry, and both times he arrived at the same place. 31. The visits ran from a Thursday in late September of last year all the way to a Tuesday afternoon in November. Today, the afternoon he had come home with salmon and a lemon tart and a specific, careful hope that they might eat at the table for once. He opened the first entry. The BMW pulled in smooth and unhurried, parked close to the garage. The driver got out. White, early 40s, carrying nothing but his keys. He walked to the front door with the kind of easy stride that does not belong to a man going somewhere for the first time. Andre closed the entry. He did not need to watch them. He had the data. The data was enough. He kept sorting. The silver Audi appeared 6 times. The entries were spread out. 2 in the spring, 3 in summer, 1 in early fall. Paul Greer, though Andre did not have the name yet, just the car. 6 afternoons. 6 timestamps. 6 little gray rectangles that added up to a man who had been in his home 6 times while he was somewhere else. The gray Lexus appeared 4 times. Different spacing. Mostly Fridays. Andre pulled a legal pad from the desk drawer. He did not know why he owned a legal pad in a guest room desk, but there it was, slightly compressed from the drawer. He wrote the numbers down. He wrote the date ranges. He made a simple table: vehicle, color, first appearance, last appearance, total visits. Then he opened the download function and started pulling files. It took a long time. Each video clip was its own file. He worked through them methodically, one by one, renaming each file as he downloaded it. BMW entry UNDRAW 1, BMW entry UNDRAW 2, timestamp, date. He did this for all 31 BMW entries, all 6 Audi entries, all 4 Lexus entries. He created a folder for each vehicle. He created a master folder labeled with the current date. His hands did not shake. His breathing was steady. This was not because he was not feeling it. He was feeling it like a man feels standing water beneath a floor. The specific sickness of something ruined underneath something that looked fine. He was feeling it in a place below the place where his face lived, below the place where his voice lived. He was feeling it, and he was filing it, because that was what the situation required. He thought about 31 Tuesdays and Thursdays, random Wednesday afternoons, Fridays. He thought about 31 days when he had been in a conference room presenting work that would carry someone else's name, or on a job site with a tape measure and a set of plans, or eating lunch at his desk because there was always more to do. 31 days that had looked, from where he was standing, like ordinary days in an ordinary life. She had not been reckless. That was the thing that pressed on him now, heavier than the anger, heavier than the hurt. Reckless would have meant impulse. Reckless would have meant she had not fully thought it through. She had been organized. 19 months of a private account running parallel to their joint account. 14 months of a second life running parallel to their shared one. The small withdrawals, the managed optics, the cover of real estate hours that no one would question, because real estate hours were genuinely irregular, genuinely unpredictable, genuinely hers to account for however she chose. She had looked at their marriage and decided it was a structure she could hollow out from the inside, while keeping the exterior intact. She had counted on him to keep maintaining the exterior. She had counted on his steadiness, his patience, his refusal to press on cracks before he was ready. She had used everything that was good about him against him. He thought about the laugh, the open, unhurried laugh in the doorway, the look she had given Kevin, what she had aimed at his back in the kitchen. She had been that comfortable. She had been that certain. Andre picked up his phone and opened the message thread with Philip. 23 documented entries over 14 months. Video. Timestamps. 3 vehicles. BMW X31, Audi X6, Lexus X4. All downloaded and labeled. Philip's response came 11 seconds later. Send everything to Denise Fowler. I'm calling her tonight. Andre opened the file transfer and sent the folder. All 41 files. The legal pad notes, photographed, the organized table of vehicles and dates. He set the phone on the nightstand. He lay back on the guest room bed. He did not change his clothes. He did not turn on a light. The ceiling was pale in the dark, catching the thin edge of streetlight through the curtains. The cabinet in his mind, the one where he had been filing moments for years, the developer's unanswered question, Krista's little job, every credit taken, every allowance extended past its expiration, was open now, all the way open. Andre Washington stared at the ceiling and did not sleep. The offices of Fowler Family Law occupied the 14th floor of a glass building on Peachtree Street, where the morning light came in flat and useful, the way light does when it has no agenda except to illuminate. Andre arrived at 7:58 a.m. in the same clothes he had worn the day before. He had not slept. He had showered in the guest bathroom at 6, changed his shirt, and sat at the kitchen table with coffee for 40 minutes while the house was quiet and Krista's bedroom door stayed closed. He had not knocked. He had nothing to say to her yet. When he had something to say, he would say it through Denise Fowler. The reception area was clean and spare. Neutral walls, no art except one framed print near the window that said nothing decorative, just a small block of text in plain type that Andre did not read. The receptionist took his name and offered him water. He said yes, and meant it. He did not wait long. Denise Fowler came through the hallway door at 8:03 with a coffee in one hand and a legal folder in the other, and she moved the way a woman moves when she has already been working for 2 hours and intends to work for 8 more. She was compact and deliberate, natural gray at her temples, reading glasses pushed up on her forehead like she had just come from reading something and would be going back to it shortly. She shook Andre's hand. Her grip was brief and firm. "Sit down," she said. Not unkindly, simply efficiently. She sat across from him, opened the folder, and took a sip of her coffee without looking up. "I reviewed the files your brother sent over. All 41 entries." She turned a page. "I also spoke with Philip at 11:30 last night." She looked up at him. "I want you to know I don't usually take calls at 11:30. "I appreciate that," Andre said. Philip explained why I should. She set down her coffee. "So, adultery grounds. In this state, what you have is more than sufficient. Frankly, it's overwhelming. 31 documented entries with video, time-stamped across 14 months. The behavior is established. It is consistent. And it is recorded. We can file today." She looked at him over the top of her glasses, which had migrated back to the bridge of her nose somewhere in the last sentence. "I want to file today." "File today," Andre said. She wrote something, turned another page. "Before I draft the motion, I need to ask you something." She set her pen down. "When did you last look at your joint checking account?" Andre thought. "Last week." Balance was around 40,000. Denise turned her laptop to face him. The screen showed a bank account summary. Current balance, $4,200. Andre looked at the number. He looked at it the way he had looked at the 31 entries on the doorbell log. The full picture first, before the details, so you understood what you were actually looking at. Then Denise scrolled down. The transaction history ran back 19 months. The withdrawals were small. $300, $800, $450, $2,100. They came in irregular intervals, spaced out, sized down, small enough that no automatic alert threshold was ever crossed, large enough that, added together across 19 months, They drained exactly $36,000 from the account that was supposed to be their household foundation. She knew the alert thresholds, Andre said. She knew them precisely, Denise said. This was not careless. Someone thought about what size transaction would go unnoticed and then stayed under it, consistently, for over a year and a half. Andre was quiet. Denise closed the transaction screen and pulled up a second window. Your brother contacted Harold Tate at Meridian Wealth yesterday evening. Tate pulled the full account picture. She paused in a way that was not dramatic, simply honest. The pause of a person giving you a moment before they hand you a heavy thing. There is a second account, a private account at Coastal Credit Union, opened 14 months ago. Your name is not on it. She has been receiving transfers there from your joint account, and we believe she has also been routing a portion of her commission income directly to it, rather than into the household. She turned the screen again. Current balance, $62,000. Andre sat with that number in the same room as the number 4,200. He sat with both of them with what they meant together. The money she had been quietly moving out of one hand and into the other while he was at his desk and on his job sites and at Maison Rouge ordering her salmon. He thought about the laugh in the doorway. He thought about, or what? Freeze the joint account, he said. File the motion today. The private account goes into discovery. Already drafted. Denise picked up her pen. I just needed your authorization to move. You have it, she wrote. He drank the last of his water. Outside the window, Peachtree Street was filling up. Cars, people, the ordinary motion of a city that did not know or care what was happening on the 14th floor. The papers were filed at 9:47 a.m. Denise retained the process server before Andre finished his coffee. Krista Washington had a talent for walking into a room. She knew how to enter, how to carry herself across a threshold in a way that said, I am not here because I need to be. I am here because I chose to be. It was something she had practiced, refined, and eventually stopped thinking about, the way you stop thinking about breathing. It was just how she moved through the world. She walked into Hartwell Realty at 1:15 p.m. on Wednesday in a cream blazer and heels, her bag over one shoulder, her hair pulled back in a way that looked effortless because she had worked at it for 20 minutes. She had spent the morning doing what she always did when something threatened to be a problem. She had reorganized it in her mind until it looked manageable. Andre had found out. Fine. It was not ideal, but it was not catastrophic. He would be upset. He would be very, very upset. And then, when the upset ran its course, they would have a conversation about what she actually wanted, which was a settlement that left her positioned the way she deserved to be positioned. And Andre would cooperate because Andre always cooperated. And that would be that. She had been building this version of the situation since 2 a.m. By the time she walked past the front desk, smiled at the receptionist, and dropped her bag at her chair, she had almost convinced herself. Her colleague Maya was at the neighboring desk, on the phone. Her other colleague, Darren, was standing by the printer. Her office manager, Roberta, was reviewing something on her computer near the back. Ordinary afternoon. Ordinary office. The man came through the front door at 2:15. Krista did not look up right away. She was reading an email. She heard the door, heard the receptionist say something, heard a male voice respond, and then heard footsteps coming across the floor toward her specifically. Not wandering, not asking. And she looked up. He was medium height, plain-faced, holding a manila envelope. He was dressed like someone who had learned to dress neutrally on purpose, so that you would remember the papers and not the person. Krista Washington, he said. She stared at him. Something cold moved through her stomach. Yes, she said. The word came out before she could decide whether to say it. He set the envelope on her desk. You've been served. He said it the way people say, have a good day. No particular feeling. just the required words in the required order. Then he turned and walked back to the front door and was gone. The office was very quiet. Maya had stopped talking. Darren had stopped moving. Roberta had looked up from her computer. They were all doing the thing people do when something private becomes public, pretending not to see it while seeing every detail. Krista looked at the envelope on her desk. Her name was typed on the front in clean, plain font. She picked it up. She turned it over. She opened it with the same controlled hands she used when she needed people to believe she was fine. She read the first page. Petitioner: Andre Marcus Washington. Respondent: Krista Yvonne Washington. Grounds: adultery. She stopped reading. She stood up, picked up her phone and her bag, walked through the office without looking at anyone, pushed through the side door, and stepped into the afternoon air of the parking lot. She called Andre. It rang 4 times and went to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. She stood beside her car with the sun on her face and called a 3rd time. A 4th. Nothing. She started texting. Andre, call me back right now. This is insane. She stared at her phone. No response. She typed again. You did this at my job? In front of my coworkers? This is humiliating, and you know it. Call me. Nothing. She could see the delivered notification. She could see he was not typing back. So this is who you are. Fine. You want to play this game? Let's play it. That house is in my name and you know it. You have nothing. You will get nothing. I have an attorney and she will eat yours alive. She waited. Her hands were not quite steady. You don't have the finances to fight this. You never did. That's always been the problem, Andre. Wake up. The delivered notification sat there, unchanged, unmoved. She stared at the blinking cursor for a long moment. Then, slowly, something else moved in. Something cooler, more calculating, the part of her brain that always eventually took over. We can handle this quietly. I'm willing to have a conversation. A real one. Not through lawyers. Call me, and we can figure this out. This doesn't have to get ugly. Andre read that last message at 3:10 p.m. He was sitting in his car in the parking garage beneath Denise Fowler's building. He had read all 7 messages in the order they arrived, without expression, the way he read a set of engineering specs. For information, not for feeling. He put his phone face down on the passenger seat. He did not type anything. At 9:04 that same morning, 4 hours before the process server walked into Hartwell Realty, Philip Washington had been sitting at his desk on the 22nd floor of his firm's office in Buckhead. He had made 11 calls before noon that day. 10 of them were ordinary. The 11th was to a man named Conrad Reese, a principal at Longview Partners, a private equity group whose portfolio included, among many other things, 34% of the assets under management at a mid-tier firm called Carver Stills Capital, Kevin Adler's firm. Philip and Conrad had known each other for 9 years. They had done clean business. They spoke the same professional language, which meant that when Philip raised a concern, he raised it in the way that language required. Carefully, without names, without anything that could be quoted back or traced forward. I've been hearing some things, Philip said, about discretion at the asset management level, nothing I can point to directly. But when I hear things twice, I tend to mention it to the people it might affect. Conrad was quiet for a moment. I appreciate you saying something. Of course, Philip said. That's all I've got. Understood, Conrad said. The call lasted 6 minutes. Philip moved on to his next item. At 4:47 p.m., Kevin Adler received a formal written notice from Longview Partners. He read it standing at his desk. He read it twice. His assistant was behind him, and he did not turn around. He stood very still and read the words strategic portfolio, restructuring and initiating withdrawal of managed assets, and felt, for perhaps the first time in a very long time, the specific sensation of a floor disappearing beneath him. He set the letter down. He picked up his phone. He did not call Krista. Kevin Adler read the letter 3 times. The first time, his eyes moved over the words without fully processing them. Strategic portfolio restructuring, initiating withdrawal of managed assets, effective upon standard transition protocol, clean language, corporate language, the kind of language that had been constructed specifically to say something devastating while sounding like nothing at all. The second time, he understood what he was reading. The third time, he did the math. 34%. Gone. He set the letter on his desk. His assistant, Brianna, was somewhere behind him. He could hear her keyboard, hear the small, ordinary sounds of an afternoon that had not yet caught up to what was happening on his side of the office. He did not turn around. He stood at his window and looked out at the Atlanta skyline and felt the specific, unfamiliar sensation of a man who has never genuinely miscalculated suddenly understanding what miscalculation feels like. His year-end bonus was built on assets under management. The structure was simple. More assets, more bonus. Lose 34% of your base. Not underperformance, not a bad quarter, but a full client withdrawal. And the bonus didn't shrink. It evaporated. That was not a metaphor. That was arithmetic. He sat down. He picked up his phone and called Marcus Carver, one of the firm's 2 managing partners. Marcus picked up on the first ring, which meant Marcus had already seen it. "I know," Marcus said before Kevin could speak. "I got the letter an hour ago." "What happened?" Kevin said. "I don't know yet." Marcus's voice was flat and controlled, the voice of a man managing something while also managing the person he was talking to. "Conrad Reese is not returning my calls today. I have a meeting with their transition team tomorrow morning." "This doesn't make sense," Kevin said. "Longview has been with us for 6 years. There were no performance issues. There was nothing. You don't pull 34% over nothing." "No," Marcus said. "You don't." A beat. "I'm going to need you in the meeting tomorrow," Marcus said. 7:30. Be early. The call lasted 9 minutes. When it ended, Kevin sat at his desk and stared at nothing for a long moment. Then he started making calls. 3 other clients. Careful calls. Checking in. Nothing that would signal alarm. Just a senior manager being attentive. All 3 calls went fine. All 3 clients were satisfied. He had no idea why that made him feel worse. He did not call Krista. At 5:20 p.m. across town, a man named Gerald Hutchins was finishing a phone call of his own. Gerald ran a mid-sized philanthropic foundation that focused on workforce development in underserved communities. He was careful with his board. He was careful with who he let into his organization's orbit, because his major donor, a man named Warren Ellis, who had funded the foundation's last 2 program cycles, was the kind of man who noticed everything and said very little. Gerald had learned, over 5 years of working with Warren, to pay attention to what Warren noticed. Warren had mentioned something to Gerald that afternoon. Casual. Almost offhand. A name, Todd Barber, and a general observation about professional judgment. Nothing specific. Nothing quoted. Just the measured concern of a man who had heard something he wanted to pass along. Gerald had been considering Todd Barber for a board advisory role for the past 6 weeks. Todd had the right resume, the right connections. He had seemed like a clean fit. Gerald pulled up Todd's file, looked at it for a moment, and then quietly closed it. He sent a short email to his program director. "Let's hold off on the Barber appointment for now. I'll explain later." He did not explain later. There was nothing specific to explain. He simply moved on to the next item on his list. Todd Barber would not receive a phone call. He would receive, eventually, a polite email informing him that the advisory consideration had been postponed indefinitely. He would have no idea why. He would spend a confusing week trying to identify who he had offended and come up with nothing. Paul Greer found out about the contract friction late that same afternoon. His company had been in the final stage of a regional supply contract renewal, the kind of renewal that was supposed to be a formality, the kind where the paperwork comes back with a signature and everyone moves on. Instead, it came back with a request for a full compliance review. New documentation requirements. A delay of 4 to 6 weeks minimum. Paul called his contact at the contracting firm. His contact was apologetic and vague. Internal process review. New procurement guidelines. Nothing personal. Paul stood in his kitchen that evening holding his phone, running through every possible explanation for why a contract his company had held for 3 years had suddenly become complicated. He came up with several. None of them were correct. None of them involved a Tuesday afternoon in someone else's living room, or a man who had stood in a doorway and set down a restaurant bag without raising his voice. He never would. Krista had been calling Kevin since 3 p.m. By 7:30 p.m., she had left 2 voicemails and sent 4 texts. His read receipts were on. She could see that he had seen them. She watched the screen. No response. No typing indicator. Nothing. She told herself he was busy. She told herself it was a bad day. She told herself a lot of things during the drive home. During the drive to her home. The house that was in her name. The house she had made sure was in her name. Because she had learned a long time ago to protect her position before she needed the protection. She pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. The lights inside were on. She used her key. Andre was at the kitchen table. He had a cup of coffee in front of him. His hands were folded around it. He was not on his phone. He was not looking at the door. He was just sitting there, in the kitchen, in the quiet, as if he had been waiting for a while and did not mind the wait at all. Krista stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Krista set her purse on the counter with more force than necessary. It was a small sound, a deliberate sound, the sound of a woman arriving with intention. "I talked to my sister's husband tonight," she said. "He does family law. He told me exactly what this filing means and what it doesn't mean." She didn't sit. She stood on the far side of the kitchen island, where she had the counter between her and Andre, and she kept her voice at the level of controlled authority she used when she was showing a property she needed to move. "It means you're upset. That's all it means. You filed papers because you're emotional and you wanted to make a point." Andre looked at his coffee. "I have rights in this marriage, Andre. Real ones. And you don't get to weaponize the legal system because your feelings are hurt." She waited for him to say something. He didn't. "The papers are a reaction," she said. "That's all they are. And reactions can be undone." She moved to the edge of the island, closer now, her voice dropping slightly, almost reasonable, almost generous. "If you want to have an actual conversation about what's been wrong between us, what's been wrong for a long time, and don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about, then I'm willing to do that. But not like this." Andre lifted his coffee, drank, set it back down. Krista's jaw tightened. "The house is in my name," she said. She said it the way someone puts a card on the table. Flat. Final. The sound of a woman who had spent years making sure she had something to put down. "I handled the closing. I made sure of that. So, whatever you and your little attorney think you're doing, you need to understand that you are not taking this house. You cannot take what is not yours." Andre looked up at her then. He did not look angry. He did not look hurt. He looked the way he looked when he was reading a structural drawing. Attentive, unhurried, already 3 steps ahead. "I know about the deed," he said. She opened her mouth. "I also know that every mortgage payment for the last 38 months came out of my personal checking account," he said. "Not our joint account. Mine. Automatic transfer. First of every month. 38 consecutive payments." He held her gaze. "Denise has every bank statement. The marital contribution to this property is not in dispute." Krista was quiet. "Do you want to see the doorbell log?" he said. He turned his laptop to face her. She looked at the screen, sorted by vehicle, dates going back 14 months. Kevin's black BMW appearing over and over and over, the timestamps stacked in a column, each one a Tuesday or a Thursday or a random Wednesday afternoon when she had been certain the day was hers. 23 documented visits, Andre said. Video and timestamps on all of them. Kevin's car 31 times, the Audi 6, the gray Lexus 4. Her face had gone very still. The joint account was frozen this morning, he said. Court order. You'll find that it currently holds around $4,000. Denise has the transaction history going back 19 months, the withdrawals, the pattern of them, the amounts, all of it. He paused. She also has documentation on the private account at Coastal Credit Union, the one you opened 14 months ago, the one with $62,000 in it. Krista's hand moved to the counter, not reaching for anything, just finding something solid. That account, Andre said, will be addressed in discovery. The kitchen was very quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a car passed on the street. Kevin, she said. It came out softer than she intended, less certain, like the word had lost something on the way out. Andre looked at her. Kevin is having a difficult quarter, he said. She stared at him. Something moved through her face. Not one thing, but several things at once, moving fast, and then settling into an expression she had never worn in front of him before. Not anger, not the performance of anger. Something closer to the look of a person standing in a building who has just understood, too late, that the floor is not where she thought it was. She was seeing him. Not the version she had filed away 6 years ago and stopped updating. Not the man who absorbed things quietly, who thanked people by name, who came home with her salmon and her lemon tart without being asked. She was seeing the man who had sat in this kitchen and waited, with his coffee and his folded hands and his complete, unhurried patience, because he had already finished every part of this before she walked through the door. She had no card left. Not the deed. Not Kevin. Not the account she had spent 14 months building like a private exit. Not the indignation. Not the legal posturing. Not the script she had rehearsed on the drive over. Andre had not argued with any of it. He had not needed to. He had simply told her what was true. Andre stood. He picked up his coffee. I'd like you to remove your things within 2 weeks, he said. Denise will be in touch about the schedule. He walked out of the kitchen. His footsteps moved down the hall. The stairs. One step, then the next, steady and unhurried, until they faded entirely. Krista stood alone in the kitchen. Krista drove with both hands on the wheel and the radio off. She had tried Kevin 4 times since leaving the house. 4 calls, all of them rolling to voicemail after 2 rings. 2 rings meant he was seeing her name and pressing a button. 2 rings meant a decision. She understood that. She just wasn't ready to say it out loud yet. Her mother's house was 20 minutes north, in a quiet neighborhood of brick ranches and mature oak trees and neighbors who had lived next to each other long enough to know each other's cars. Diane Holloway had lived in the same house for 31 years. It had yellow shutters and a porch light that stayed on all night, and a front door that Krista had never once knocked on, because you didn't knock on your mother's door. She parked in the driveway, behind her mother's Camry, and sat for a moment with her hands still on the wheel. She needed to get the story straight. That was the thing. Not straight in the legal sense. She had her sister's husband for that. Straight in the family sense. Straight in the sense of what this looked like, what it meant, what could be salvaged from it. She needed her mother to understand Andre's role in all of it. The emotional distance, the ambition that stopped growing, the way a woman could disappear inside a quiet marriage without anyone noticing until she found somewhere that made her feel like herself again. She had the shape of it. She just needed her mother to receive it. The porch light was on. She got out of the car. Diane opened the door before Krista reached the steps. She was in her house clothes, a soft gray cardigan over a printed top, reading glasses pushed up on her head. She looked like someone who had been expecting a guest, but had not been looking forward to their arrival. She stepped back to let Krista in and did not say baby or come here or any of the words she usually produced automatically. The reflexive warmth that had been Krista's whole life. She just stepped back. The living room was the same as it always was. The same floral couch, the same side table with the picture frames, the same smell of whatever candle Diane was burning. Vanilla and something warm underneath it. But there was something on the coffee table that didn't belong. A folder, plain manila, closed. Krista looked at it. Then she looked at her mother. Diane sat down in her chair. Her chair, the high-backed one beside the lamp she read under, and folded her hands in her lap the way she folded them at church, like she was getting ready to listen to something hard. "Mama," Krista started, "I need to talk to you about what's happening. Because there is a version of this that Andre is going to tell people, and it is not the whole—" "Andre was here this afternoon," Diane said. Krista stopped. "He came by himself. No lawyer. No one else." Diane's voice was measured. Not cold, but not soft either. The voice she used when she meant every word and did not want to repeat herself. "He sat right there where you're sitting, and he set that folder on the table, and he let me look through it. Doorbell records, bank statements, 14 months of it." She paused. "He only asked me one thing." Krista didn't speak. He said, "Ms. Holloway, how long did you know?" The room was very still. "And I didn't answer right away," Diane said, "because I was ashamed. Because I wanted to find a way to say it that made my part of it smaller than it was." She looked at her daughter steadily. "But it wasn't small, Krista. I knew you had someone. You told me yourself 14 months ago. You told me his name, and you told me what you were doing, and I said—" Her voice caught for just a moment, then steadied. "I said, be careful." The word landed in the room like something dropped. Be careful. Not stop. Not what about your husband. Not this will cost someone something real. Be careful. "I should have told you to stop," Diane said. "I should have said what I knew, which was that you were going to hurt a decent man, and one day you were going to have to look at what you did." She pressed her hands together in her lap. "I didn't, and I have to live with that." Krista's mouth opened. "Mama, if you would just listen to what actually happened between us." "I know what happened between you," Diane said. "I've watched it for 6 years. I watched that man come to every dinner I made. I watched him fix my porch railing without being asked. I watched him sit at my table and be kind to me, even when you were sharp with him in front of me." She shook her head slowly. "I let you treat him like furniture, Krista. And I let you think that was fine, because I never said otherwise. So you're taking his side." "I'm not taking anyone's side." Diane's voice stayed even. "I'm telling you the truth. You asked me for a long time to do something different with the truth when it came to you. And I did it. And that was wrong." She looked at her daughter. "I won't do it now." Krista stared at her mother. The folder sat on the coffee table between them. She reached for it. Diane didn't stop her. Inside was everything Andre had already shown her in her own kitchen. The timestamps, the vehicle logs, the transaction history, her own name on an account she had opened in careful, deliberate secret. She closed the folder. "I need you right now," Krista said. The edge was gone from her voice. What was underneath it was something rawer. "Whatever you think about what I did, I am your daughter, and I need you right now." Diane looked at her for a long moment. "I love you," she said. "I will always love you, but I am not going to help you rewrite this." Her voice was quiet and absolutely final. "I'm not able to do that." Krista set the folder down on the cushion beside her. She picked up her purse. She stood. Her mother did not move from her chair. Krista walked to the front door. She put her hand on the knob. She stood there for a moment with her back to the room, and Diane let her stand there because there was nothing left to say that either of them didn't already know. Then Krista opened the door and walked out into the night, and the porch light lit her all the way to her car. The apartment was on the 11th floor of a building on Ponce de Leon that Andre had helped design 9 years ago, back when he was still a junior associate, and Lloyd had let him run the residential unit layouts on his own because nobody else on the team wanted to do the interior work. Andre had wanted to do it. He had spent 3 weeks on those floor plans. He had thought about light and ceiling height and the way a person's body feels inside a room before they can name why it feels good. He had never lived in the building. He had just built it, quietly, and moved on. Now he lived on the 11th floor, with 2 big windows facing east and a drafting table he had set up where a dining room table would have gone. Most people would have put a dining room table there. Andre put the drafting table there because most mornings he woke up before the city did, and the light came in sideways and clean, and there was nowhere else he would rather be at 6 a.m. than standing in front of something he was making. The sketches on the table were preliminary. A residential project, a single-family home in Decatur for a family he had met through a mutual contact. Their first conversation had lasted 90 minutes and covered everything. How the kids moved through the house, where the grandmother sat, how the father cooked, and whether he needed a window above the range or just thought he did. Andre had taken 4 pages of notes and drawn nothing until he had read through them twice. The family was going to be in this house for the rest of their lives. That mattered to him. You build something that holds a family for 30 years. You are building something that will be in their children's memory. You do not rush the beginning of that. His name was already on the plans. Washington Architectural Design, LLC. He had filed the LLC 7 months ago. 11 days after Gates and Associates made the offer he had been waiting 11 years to be made. Named partner. His name on the door. Not just Lloyd's anymore. Compensation restructured to reflect what his work had actually been generating for the firm for the better part of a decade. And something else. 3 major past projects, including the Hargrove Center submission, formally and retroactively credited to Andre Washington as lead design architect. His name in the record, his name in the file, his name on the work he had done. Lloyd had offered the partnership with the particular graciousness of a man who understood he was not in a negotiating position. Andre had accepted it with the particular graciousness of a man who already had his next move ready and was choosing, consciously and finally, to take the better option over the satisfying one. He kept the LLC anyway. He ran his residential work through it on his own time. The Decatur house was the first. It would not be the last. The divorce had been final for 4 months. The judge had reviewed the mortgage records, 38 months of payments from Andre's personal account, documented to the penny by Denise Fowler, who had presented them with the quiet efficiency of someone who had done this many times and intended to do it correctly every single time. The marital contribution was not in dispute. The house went to Andre in the settlement. He had sold it 2 weeks later. He did not want the house. He had never wanted the house back. Not the actual structure, not the rooms, not the skylight he had designed. What he had wanted was for the record to be correct, for the facts to be the facts. The sale paid off the remaining mortgage and left a clean balance that he rolled into the down payment on a piece of land in Decatur he had been watching for 2 years. The land was for later. He was patient. Krista had walked away with enough to start over, not enough to maintain what she had been building toward. The private account had been factored into the settlement distribution, the $62,000 appearing in Denise's filings with the clarity of something that had been there the whole time, waiting to be found. Krista's attorney had tried 3 different arguments. None of them worked. Facts, in Denise Fowler's hands, had a way of staying facts. Kevin had left Carver Stills 6 weeks after the Longview withdrawal. The math on his position had never recovered. 34% fewer assets under management meant a role that the firm could not justify at his compensation level. He moved to a smaller shop across town. He was managing fewer assets and making less money, and as far as Andre knew, had not spoken to Krista since before the divorce was final. He was never going to absorb her liability. Andre had known that before Krista had. Todd's advisory opportunity had never resurfaced. Paul's contract renewal had cost him months of his time and a working relationship that never fully repaired itself. Neither of them knew why. Neither of them ever would. His phone buzzed on the kitchen counter at 9 a.m. He looked at the screen. Diane Holloway. He set down his pencil. He answered. Andre. Her voice was the same as it always was, measured, a little formal with him in a way it hadn't always been. I just wanted to call and say happy birthday. I hope you're well. A beat. I am, he said. Thank you, Ms. Holloway. She said goodbye. He said goodbye. They hung up. He stood at the counter for a moment. Then he walked back to the drafting table, picked up his pencil, and looked at the preliminary sketches spread out in the morning light. His name was already on the plans. He began to draw. I hope you enjoyed that one. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss the next story. I've picked out 2 more for you that I think you'll really like.